The government remains unmoved tonight despite the pleas of 260 Tamil asylum seekers to be allowed to enter Australia. The group are being guarded by the Indonesian Navy and are refusing to leave their vessel. They'd been heading towards Christmas Island when it was intercepted at Australia's request and taken to Merak in Western Java.
They made land, but not the land they were hoping for. Now the asylum seekers are refusing to leave their boat and have appealed to Australia to accept them on humanitarian grounds.
We're just people without a country to live in. I'm not sure how many people have experienced that kind of life, but I'm sure the media has gone around the world and seen many countries like our country. But the situation in our country right now, I'm telling you, Tamils do not have an opportunity to survive in Sri Lanka.
The people on board say they left Sri Lanka at the end of July and spent a month hiding in the jungle in Malaysia. Next came 10 days at sea on course for Australia. With that plan scuppered, they say living in any country is better than going back.
Please help us and save our life. We are your children. Please think of us. Please. Please. Sri Lanka refugees, we have lived in forest for 1 month. Please, sir, please take us to your country. It's okay because it's not Australia. It's better if any other country takes us. We can't live in Sri Lanka.
The asylum seekers say they've been treated well by the Indonesian Navy, but they seem reluctant to place their trust in the Indonesian authorities.
Nah, di sini kita amankan di sini.
Hanya di kapal saja.
Iya, hanya di kapal aja dulu. Mereka tidak mau ke darat. Nah, saya perlahan, ini perlahan betul ya, karena kita mengutamakan human right tadi itu.
There had been reports that the asylum seekers in Indonesia had threatened to blow up the boat.
We do not want to blow up the ship. We do not want to die. We did not come this far to die. We came this far to live, find a life.
It may not be the life they were hoping for. It looks like being their only choice. Keith Breen, World News Australia.
The opposition is stepping up demands for a crackdown on the influx of asylum seekers from Sri Lanka and Afghanistan, but the government is refusing to change its current policy course.
Though the pleas are getting personal, the Prime Minister remains unmoved.
We believe unapologetically in a tough, hardline approach to border security, but we'll always treat people fairly.
Kevin Rudd's refusing to confirm reports that 6 more boats are on the way. It used to be Iraqis fleeing war. Now it's Afghans and Sri Lankans. The government blames the conflicts. The opposition blames the policy change since the election.
That is the greatest humbug. He's laid out the welcome mat and he's held the door right open.
Malcolm Turnbull's predicting thousands more will come.
He has unpicked a very carefully constructed fabric of policy that enabled us to have protected borders and little or no illegal arrivals. We're now facing what looks like being the beginning of a flood.
The government's confirmed it's expanding accommodation at the 1,000-bed Christmas Island detention centre with demountables earmarked for Indigenous communities but never used, soon to be shipped over. The opposition is still drafting its post-election policy. It's considering reintroducing a form of temporary protection visa, like those abolished when the Rudd government took office. The government says they don't help.
The Liberals talk about temporary protection visas. 90% of those issued with temporary protection visas ended up staying in this country.
He's demanding the coalition's policy.
Mr Rudd has to tell us what he is going to do. It is his problem. He is Prime Minister. He is the one that dismantled a border protection policy that worked.
He wants a full national inquiry. The Prime Minister says there's no need, that the system is working.
If we find that a person is not a legitimate asylum seeker, we send them home.
But most who make it to Australia do get to stay, and most did under the previous government too. Karen Middleton, World News Australia.
Britain's Prime Minister Gordon Brown has pledged to send 500 more troops to Afghanistan, bringing its total to 9,500. But he's attached conditions, including more Afghan troops and more coalition forces.
The British reinforcements will be sent to Helmand province in the south of Afghanistan. The army's been asking for them for 6 months. In that time, casualties have been mounting at an alarming rate, fueling anti-war sentiment in Britain. Before making his announcement to the Parliament, Gordon Brown read out the names of soldiers added to the list.
From the Royal Marines, Sergeant Lee Holtram. From the Light Dragoons, Trooper Philip Lawrence.
The commitment in principle to send reinforcements was conditional. Gordon Brown said British troops had to be properly equipped and that the Afghan government must train more of its own forces.
And third, that our commitment is part of an agreed approach across the international coalition, with all countries bearing their fair share.
Prime Minister Rudd says Australia has already increased troop numbers by 40% to around 1,500, most of whom are training Afghan forces in Oruzgan province.
Once that mission is completed and we hand over our responsibility to that provincial authority, then of course Australia's mission will be concluded and our troops would come home.
Some analysts say the British announcement was aimed at Washington.
And demonstrating to the Americans that we do not want them to go wobbly on this whole mission when Obama is reconsidering what his aims are.
In Washington, America's top soldier, Admiral Mike Mullen, and other top officials joined President Obama for another Council of War at the White House. The American commander in Afghanistan wants 40,000 more troops. The BBC's reporting that Mr. Obama is considering sending more, but not that many. Ross Cameron, World News Australia.
A court in western China's Xinjiang region has sentenced 6 more people to death over deadly ethnic unrest in July. 3 others have been jailed for life. Earlier this week, another 6 defendants were also sentenced to death. The woman held captive in California for 18 years, J.C. Dugard, has spoken publicly for the first time since she was discovered living with her alleged captors. And the first image of her has been published as she is now.
For 18 years, J.C. Dugard was kept hidden away from public view. She was 11 years old when she was snatched from a street near a home in Northern California. Now her smiling face adorns the cover of one of America's most popular celebrity magazines. She closely resembles the childhood pictures that have been seen around the world. Her blonde locks